So we've been talking about geological column, dating of the Earth, and why science thinks the Earth is so old, and so the next thing I want to get into is radiometric dating. Radiometric dating is the process of taking a sample, finding radioactive material in that sample, and then judging that versus the non-radioactive daughter material. So the radioactive material degrades, leaves behind a daughter material, which is the leftover after the radioactive material has degraded, and then judging how much originally the radioactive material must have been. So radioactive potassium degrades into argon, and there is a half-life. So if you had 5 pounds of radioactive potassium, and it takes that 5,000 years for a half-life, and I'm just making these numbers up, I don't know what they really are, but that means in 5,000 years, half of that 5 pounds will die, and you'll have 2.5 pounds of radioactive argon left, or radioactive potassium left, and then you'll have 2.5 pounds of argon. So 5,000 years later. So you can determine that it's been 5,000 years since this rock formed based on you have 2.5 pounds left and 2.5 pounds of argon. That's the simple explanation. I'll go into that more in detail another time. In this video, I want to go into a little more of a different direction, because when people talk about radiometric dating, they actually use a throwaway, useless term very often because they don't understand what they're talking about, or they get into a lazy terminology situation and they say things about carbon dating. Carbon dating is a throwaway term. It's a useless, it really is a useless form of radiometric dating. It doesn't work. It's never worked. And even if it did work, it, under the best of conditions, is only good for, at best, about 50,000 years worth of dating. And even that is still wildly inaccurate. Carbon dating is only good for soft tissue dating. So there is no actual parent-daughter relationship. It is just carbon dating takes a radiometric carbon, or radioactive carbon, carbon 14. Everything in the atmosphere that breathes air or eats something that breathes air has radioactive carbon in it. So you and I and the grass and the other animals and all of that has a certain amount of radioactive carbon in us. Theoretically, we have the same percentage of radioactive carbon in us as the atmosphere around us, right up until we die. We stop breathing, we stop eating, we stop taking that radioactive carbon in. The moment we die, we start to have less radioactive carbon in us than the atmosphere around us does. So, after so many years, I think it's roughly 5,500 years that it takes for radioactive carbon half-life to degrade, then half of the radioactive carbon in us is gone. So then the atmosphere would be the same, but we would have half as much in us. So then you can determine how long something has been dead by the half-life of how much is left, and so on and so forth. The problem with that is that there's never been an accurate, well, okay, I can't say that. The problem with that is that there have been so many verified inaccurate tests out there, and you can find them all over the place. Living tissue that has been tested at being tens and 20s and 50s of thousands of years old. Recently dead things that have been dated at tens and 15,000 years old. Things that have had two and three and multiple samples taken from it, that all samples have dated at different time frames. Things that a sample was taken from the animal and a sample was taken from the wood next to it, and both dated at different time frames. Just all kinds of different inaccuracies. Articles that have listed that if something dates within a certain range, then we'll go ahead and publish it. If it dates outside that range, we'll make it a footnote, and if it dates far enough outside that range, we just disregard it and don't talk about it at all. It's wildly inaccurate, and more than anything, people will talk about carbon dating when they're talking about radiometric dating in rocks and things like that, which has nothing to do with carbon dating at all. So that was really the purpose of this video in general, is when someone talks to you about carbon dating, it doesn't necessarily mean they're talking about carbon dating. They may just be talking about radiometric dating in general. So get a little more information before you just take it face value they're talking about carbon dating, because they're probably not even talking about that at all. And if they are talking about carbon dating, then understand that what they're talking about has never been really a well verified and accurate science in the first place, because for everything that someone claims to be accurate, there are tons of things that they will not allow in the science journals, but tons of things that have been verified as being totally inaccurate all over the place, that they gatekeep from anybody saying and putting in any well-known journals. But the information's still out there all over the place. The best known labs are the ones that have done the tests that have been totally inaccurate, and I'll try to find a couple of them and try to put it in the comments here so you can look them up. But yeah, it's just anybody who's talking about carbon dating as a form of accurate dismissal of young Earth or anything like that, just huge grain of salt. That's all I'm saying. Again, point in this is ask the questions they don't want you to ask. We'll see you next time.